Welcome back to the Salt Lake Worldwide Podcast, your go-to spot for everything hunting, conservation, firearms, and gear. Before we dive in, let me introduce my co-host for today's episode. First up, the man, the myth, the legend, and the recently retired Army veteran, Paul Knight. So folks, Paul's still adjusting to civilian life, so if he randomly starts giving us orders mid-show or tries to conduct a tactical sweep of the studio, just roll with it, please. And then there's Oscar Maldonado, making his official debut as co-host. Though, if you've seen him before on the channel, it's because he's either had a firearm, a fishing rod, or a plate of food in front of him. The guy's a Michelin-trained chef, so not only can he shoot and fish, but he can also turn it all into a 5-star meal, meaning he's already more useful than the rest of us combined. Now, on to today's guest. We have Miss Jen McDonald. She is the managing director of the Canadian Sporting Arms and Ammunition Association. She's also the host of the Horrible People podcast and creator of whywehunt.ca. She's been at the forefront of the fight for hunting and firearms rights in Canada, and we're stoked to have her on the show. So with that, Jen, thanks for joining us, and let's get after it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I know we've been working on this for a while, and I'm glad we were finally able to put it together.
Yes, me too. Very nice to be here.
All right. So first off, Jen, if you will, I kind of gave you a little bit of an introduction, but let's start with your journey. You know, I've seen you on social media. I think we were been Facebook friends for a little bit and chatted back and forth. I saw when you came out with your podcast, and I've watched several episodes. I really like it. And you're kind of like us. You're not afraid to dive into a controversial topic. You'll just get right in there and get after it. And I think that's one of the things that I like about you and your show. But tell us quickly, what motivated you to become such an advocate for hunting and firearms rights in Canada?
Yeah, really it was the May 1st, 2020 prohibition that they put in through OIC, so there was no vote needed to pass that. It prohibited over 1,500 makes and models of firearms, and I'd always been super active, at the gun range, more active at the gun range back then than I am now with, how busy I am with this work. But that really hit close to home, and it made me realize that I have to be more politically aware, and maybe we need a little bit more of a voice out there for hunting and firearms advocate or the hunting and firearms community. So that's really what got me being more public about hunting and firearms.
Well, yeah, and especially now that what's happening, on both of our borders, with the fentanyl crisis, and you've got Trump and Trudeau. I mean, all of a sudden, it's a madhouse there. Here too.
Crazy. Yeah, I know. It's so sad to see. Absolutely. I think that everybody just needs to be, as much as it sucks, a little bit more politically aware, especially now.
Yeah, I don't know that our guy has the ability to do that, though. I think he's going to do and say whatever the hell he wants to, regardless.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah, but that's why we like it, right, boys? Yeah. I appreciate the guy for that. But so to follow up on that, so you wear so many hats. So you're from running Why We Hunt to hosting your own podcast and leading the Canadian Sporting Arms and Ammunition Association. So which of these platforms do you feel has been most impactful in advancing your mission in today's changing climate, especially?
So with those being said, I actually just signed on to host Wild Cookhouse with Fishing the Wild West TV for season 10. And that really helps demonstrate the benefits of hunting in the sense that, we eat the wild game that we actually harvest, because a lot of people don't think we do. And it helps other hunters learn how to cook and prepare their own wild game. And the actual host, Wes David, of that show kind of has the same point of view as I do, that we need to teach people that we actually eat what we harvest and we're not just, out killing animals for fun only. But the most impactful would hands down have to be CSAAA. So they're actually led by a board of volunteer directors. It's all people that make up the hunting and firearms community. So it's, the leaders of the manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. And we've done a ton of work. The organization has done a ton of work since 1973 to advocate for and protect Canada's hunting and firearms industry, which, I mean, of course, without the industry, we'd have no community. and they've done so much work on like a political level to help kind of better policy that's being pushed through so it's a little bit more workable for businesses and a little bit less damaging for our actual industry and economy, and just educating the general public on the struggles that the industry faces and anything that's kind of coming down the pipeline politically.
That's good. I want to circle back around to something because you made mention, and it's very pertinent to our conversation. In the, unfortunately, hunters do get a bad rap, and you hit the nail on the head that it's not just about squeezing the trigger; it's also about the meat that's harvested from the hunt. And that's, and I know there's Steve Ranella does a good job with his show, and because there's always that cooking portion of it too, and we've kind of
Yeah.
started to do that with Oscar being the chef, doing a lot of catch, cook, and clean episodes, because it's important to show that other side, because it's, especially right now, there's so much opposition on the left, and it's so easy for shit to get sideways. People already have a bad view and a bad opinion of us, but if we can educate them a little bit and show, hey, we're not just these bloodthirsty killers that are out shooting stuff and letting it lie down, or shooting something and whacking its head off and bringing it back to the house, I think that goes a long way. And I know, I don't want to speak for Paul, but Paul's got two young kids at the house, and through his hunting career now, and it's unique, to watch him kind of bring his kids up, and it's baby steps. He's got to do it kind of slowly to get him
Of
acclimated to it. And I
course.
think the is it still taco meat, Paul? Is that what we call
It
venison?
is.
Is still taco meat at your house?
Yeah. I mean, they know where it comes from, but yeah, they just call it taco meat, that's for
That's
sure.
awesome.
Yeah, and that's a part of it. We've got to get this next generation involved, and that's something we talk about quite a bit. Is that unfortunately, I think our generation now is the last big hunting generation. I see a lot of kids today, that unfortunately they've never been hunting for. They may not even been outdoors to do anything. Not to mention hunting or
I
fishing, just
know.
outdoors in general. You don't have to be a fisherman or a hunter to enjoy the outdoors. But now it's like these kids are just in front of a TV with a video game all the time. And what upsets me about that is the parents are okay with it.
Yeah, exactly. They're not experiencing the world. They're not seeing what real life is. They're just, sitting and scrolling.
Yeah, and that's so. Like I said, I digress. I sorry, I go down these rabbit holes occasionally. That's going to happen several times before they're done.
No,
It
that's
looks like
good.
Paul, you were writing stuff down already. Do you have something already?
No, not yet. No, I
Okay.
just
All right. I can always tell when you're looking. But all right, so let's get into some of the controversial stuff now. At least controversial from our perspective, in that it appears, we're going to talk about firearms regulations in Canada. And we had a guest on previous to you, that was from Australia. And he was a fantastic guest. We absolutely loved him. He's a great hunter, great advocate for conservation. But when it came to gun rights, he was just didn't really want to talk about it, because the
Oh,
the the gun conversation in Australia is much different than it is here in North America. And I feel like even my perspective may be a little different than yours up north. But let's start with
totally.
and Paul, feel free to jump in here if you got anything. Same way with you, Oscar. So firearm legislation and laws in general have been a major flashpoint in Canada, especially recently. We've seen it here, but you much more so than us. So can you break down the government's current push with Bill C21, for example, that you already kind of mentioned, particularly in light of the last parliamentary debates and amendments, and what this means for gun or law-abiding gun owners?
Yeah.
That's
So
a lot
Bill
all at once. I know. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I got it. So Bill C21 actually passed on December 15th of 2023. And that bill prohibited what they call the freeze of handgun transfers, so we can no longer transfer handguns legally. That did come into effect, I believe it was the May before Bill C21 officially passed, because of course they deem that like a public emergency, because God forbid people transfer guns legally. But Bill C21 also prohibited the future makes or models that would come out that are centerfire, semi-automatic, and have the capacity to hold more than 5 rounds. So if any new models come onto the market after December 2023, they're just retroactively prohibited in Canada. If they have a magazine out there that exists that can hold more than 5 rounds, but Canada specifically has one made for our own rules or laws, that holds less, still prohibited, like just retroactively killed that entire industry going forward. Bill C21 did also have a huge list of firearms that they wanted to prohibit that already exist, and they were extremely popular makes and models for both hunting and sports shooting. After a big letter writing campaign and a lot of debate, they removed that from Bill C21 before it hit royal assent and passed. But what we're seeing now is even more OICs, so orders in council that don't require votes, passing through big chunks of that list. So they're just surprise, slowly passing that through. We saw the May 1st, 2020 list. And then since then, there have been guns slowly added on. There was the December 5th order in council that passed that prohibited like 324 makes and models. Again, very popular makes and models in the industry and community. And during the ban in December, their announcement stated that they were going to prohibit even more by the end of this month, which is February. So the major things that we're seeing right now are just these slow prohibitions coming through to make happy headlines for urban voters.
And not so much for the rest of the country, though.
No, it doesn't impact public safety. It
sounds kind of like rural America here, doesn't it?
That's awful.
A little
yeah.
bit.
Yeah, no, it's no. So I just want to go back a little bit. So when they said you can't transfer handguns, does that mean you can no longer purchase a handgun either, unless it's one of the ones that were on the exception to the rule?
Correct. There's very few exceptions. So you have to be like a legitimate Olympic shooter, which I mean, we've got like a couple of those. And even if you're, training to become one, you can't buy a handgun. You can also use it for wildlife protection, but there's like a handful of people in Canada that even have that license, and it has to be a specific caliber that you can buy. So no, basically there are no people that can purchase handguns in Canada. And if you do have handguns, like if I pass away, I can't leave my handguns to like my husband, or, if I have kids, they have to be destroyed.
Really?
Yeah, it's awful.
That would never fly here, boys.
Oh my! It sucks that it's crazy flying here.
Oh my God, I can't even. So essentially, the government, and this is my opinion only, I don't want to speak for Canada, but it seems like, in my opinion, that the government has taken upon themselves to say, you as a Canadian citizen no longer have the right to purchase a firearm to protect you and your family.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's how it's been. I mean, even before these prohibitions, you can't really defend yourself in Canada with a firearm or anything, really.
Wow.
Yeah, it's absolutely
Maybe I
ridiculous.
Can talk the bear out of you.
Right.
That's it. Exactly. Like, there's so many remote areas in Canada, so many places we go hunting where there are bear encounters, and you're not going to be lugging a big rifle around to protect yourself. It's so much easier just to have a little sidearm.
Well, what was the premise of them passing the bill anyway to begin with? I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, we have mass shootings in the U.S. More than we'd like to see by far. We'd actually like to see none. Unfortunately, it happens. But I mean, I don't hear a lot of that in Canada, though. I mean, you guys aren't prone to mass shooting. I mean, there's gun violence, but not like, it's not like Chicago or New York City or LA or something like that for us. I mean, I hear very little about gun violence coming out of Canada.
I know. And it's, kind of funny that you say that, because so many police agencies in our country have begged the government and said, like, these prohibitions don't work. Stop wasting time and money with these prohibitions. There's a catch and release bail system in Canada, so it's constantly repeat offenders. The majority of the firearms, like the vast majority, like over 90% used in crime, are either smuggled or manufactured. So they're illegal firearms anyways. So prohibiting the legal sale is just more of a political gesture. It's kind of like, it sounds great in the headlines to the majority of Canadians that don't understand the laws and restrictions that already exist in Canada, and the fact that it's not, legal firearms being used in these crimes. We do have a lot of anti-gun groups and victims groups that advocate for more gun control or gun prohibitions, and unfortunately the government really seems to weigh in on what they have to say, and they know that making a big speech saying that we're banning handguns to urban voters, it sounds great. They don't really know what it means.
Mm. And is there? And I know this may be one of my follow ups too. But you guys, you've got a buyback program too, right?
We do. Yes, kind of. Um, it's officially open now as of end of December. So this is for guns that were banned. So end of December 2024 for guns that were banned May 1st, 2020. It's only open to businesses. I think they're in way over their heads because businesses are not getting the support that they need when they're trying to turn in their guns that are, dead stock so that they can make money to buy, more guns that they can actually sell and supply the community with. But yeah, it's a huge, huge strain on taxpayer dollars and resources. It's just ridiculous that they're putting this much time and money into this buyback or confiscation program that we prefer to call it.
There you go. I didn't come up with this, but yeah, I read maybe several months ago, maybe several years ago. It's not a buyback program. It's not like they bought, they purchased it from the government, right? It's they're using taxpayer dollars to get it back. So
That's
it's not
it.
like they're buying anything back that they gave you, right? It's all this the use of buyback is such a bad term anyway, right? It's actually like the government's doing us a favor by doing this, We're willing to buy it back from you, So go ahead.
Yeah, like as if you're renting it or something from them. Like, and we
Right.
have an amnesty, because I, do have firearms that are prohibited now, which is insane because it's guns that I was out turkey hunting with like a couple of years ago. Um, but I have an amnesty. There's an amnesty, so I have until October to turn these guns in, regardless of compensation or not, or else I'm, violating the law and in possession of a prohibited weapon.
Are there examples of like what kind of guns they're talking about?
Yeah, there's the Daria MK12, Ruger PC carbine. Oh my gosh, there's over 2,500 makes and models prohibited right now, and I have worked so hard on this list, I cannot like believe that they're just not coming to my head. There is the oh my goodness, what is it called? There's a ton. It's the majority are semi-automatics. There are a lot of bigger board rifles as well, like 338, 50 BMG, because those are sniper rifles.
It's hard to argue with that though. But man, that's crazy. I never. So, and you said before, I believe you said it eliminated all centerfire cartridges, correct?
Going forward, so if the Bill C21 did that, so if the model existed before December of 2023, it was either prohibited by OIC or it's okay for now. But if a new model comes out, like if they like if Winchester comes out with a new model of their axe, no, it wouldn't be axis, that's bolt action. But if there's a new model of the Henry Homesteader that comes out, that would automatically be prohibited in Canada because it's center fire semi-automatic.
So, is there any chatter? And we're going to jump around on this one a bunch, I can tell. Is there any chat? So, I mean, if they're so they're passing these laws, they're backburning them into the system without consensus vote. What do your fellow Canadians think about this? In that, at some point in time, I mean, it sounds to me like there's a potential to get a knock on your door, and they can just come and take your for. I mean,
Most definitely. There's actually video of the public safety minister saying that he will send law enforcement to our doors to collect any of these firearms, which law enforcement's already said they're not on board. I think it's just a big, strong talking point because there's an election coming up and they want to make it seem like they're being really tough on this. The amnesty expires after the next scheduled election, so that's kind of a little bit of a relief to people. It just seems like it's all smoke and mirrors. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. I think that there's just so few people that actually understand what's really going on, and so few people that care, unfortunately, in Canada about the gun debate, that they know they can do whatever they want without real backlash.
well, and you have a full. There's also you've got a full assault weapons ban, correct?
Yeah.
So no AR style anything, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Was
that's
that
it.
retroactive? Did they say, okay, if you own one, you can keep it, or you've got to turn the thing in now?
That's the same thing. Yeah. So it's prohibited, but you can keep it until that amnesty expires. So that's what they're calling the assault weapons, is just everything that's kind of being prohibited during these OICs.
Yeah, and one point I want to make to our audience, we've talked about it before. For you folks that don't know, AR does not stand for assault rifle, by the way,
Or automatic rifle.
or automatic
Exactly.
rifle. That was never the intention. It stands for Armalite. It was a type of rifle that was designed for the military originally. They take that term and they turned it into assault rifle. That is not what AR means. So just to clarify that point for anybody out there, for you leftists, you lefties that are going to chime in here, I can see it in the comments right now, just hammering us on this stuff, that AR is not assault rifle. It means something totally different. Google it and fact check me if you like.
That's it. And I mean, even this confiscation program or buyback program, the government has worded it. They call it the assault style firearms compensation program, because as soon as they throw assault style out there, people that don't know any better just picture like Hollywood mass shooting, like rapid fire craziness.
Well,
Which even then, who
yeah,
cares?
and I mean, we had a similar incident, so not nearly as bad as what you guys went through, but our original assault weapons ban was it 1970? Was it 75, Paul, or 85? I always get those discombobulated, where they essentially said anything. I think it was 85. Anything pre
85 sounds right.
1985 before the ban went in, you could have it if it was fully automatic. Anything after that, you have to have a Class 5 license to have it, and then moving forward, it was going to be tougher and tougher. But what they did was kind of similar to what it sounds like your government's trying to do. They slid a bunch of other into that bill, which as it started moving forward, that's why it was always so difficult to get a suppressor. And that's why it's so different to get a short barreled, pistol, and on and on and on, because they started throwing all this other junk in there. And, we're finally at a position now stateside where we can actually buy suppressors again, and we can get them relatively fast. There's still a massive background check. I mean, you've still got to apply for the tax stamp. It's still federal. But the ATF, and that's something we can talk about too later if you guys want to. But the ATF really overstepped, and they have been doing so for the last 10 or 15 years here in the States. And I think, especially with the election that was coming up prior to, they really backed off because they knew if Trump got elected, they were going to be screwed. And sure enough, that's what it is. So I went from the first suppressor, and we all use suppressors. All of us here, we use them for hunting, and it especially for somebody like Paul. Paul's got hearing loss from the military already, but then he wants to take his wife and kids out shooting, and it's so much easier to to get your family involved if you don't have to worry about hearing and hearing protection.
Yeah, exactly. It's
such a pleasant
PPE
experience.
and yeah,
But where I was going with that is, if you go back to all those early 80s action movies, with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and, the guy, you've got some assassin walking in, they screw a can into this pistol and goes poof, 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 and it doesn't make any noise.
I know.
People, that's not how a suppressor works in real life. At any time a round breaks the sound barrier, there's a crack. You're going to hear it. Now, there are some things that are called subsonic rounds, but you can still hear them. Your neighbor can still hear them. It doesn't work like that. It makes it hearing safe for the shooter, but it's just TV, people. It doesn't work like that in the real world.
And that's exactly it. That's why it's so frustrating that there are prohibited devices here in Canada, like across the board. I'm on the board for my local gun range, and we're currently dealing with, huge conflicts with just a handful of neighbors that hate the noise of the gun range, even though the gun range was there first. And if we had suppressors, like, this wouldn't really be that much of an issue. They'd be able to hear it, but it wouldn't be like a nuisance by any means. Like, there's just so many benefits to suppressors that
there's lots of other countries that you can, I'll use South Africa, for example. You can walk into a sporting goods store in South Africa and you can go grab a suppressor off the shelf and buy it for, I don't know, $100 US, and go screw it on the end of your rifle, and it's fine. But over in that country, it takes you 2 years to get a permit to own the rifle, but you can just walk into a store and buy a suppressor. Whereas in the US, we can walk into a store and I can walk out 15 minutes later with a new rifle, but then it used to take me 2 years to get the suppressor, to get the tax stamp. Yeah. So for us, and then for me, especially hunting with these larger calibers that we do now, we all started getting into the long range. So we really enjoyed long range shooting. But because of that, without a suppressor, especially some of these big cartridges, it makes it really difficult to enjoy the sport. if you're constantly between the muzzle brake and the recoil of the firearm, it's just not nearly as fun. I can go out with a suppressor and I can shoot 100 rounds and I never feel it the next day. I can take that same 300 for example, and you take the can off it, you squeeze the trigger twice, and you want to hand it back to the guy that just gave it to you. Like, no, I'm done, I'm out.
No, absolutely.
94, Sean, 1994.
94. Okay, I need to remember that.
I know. We need to work on our fact checker guy. I'm really
do.
slow. So
I need a Jamie like Joe Rogan's got, like that spot behind the camera. Like I need a desk with a guy there that can just pull random out for us and screen
Quick
share with
time.
us. But so,
One day.
Yeah. Wow, we're getting there slowly but surely. We just put out for we're trying to find another intern or a new intern to come in and kind of help us as we started to grow. So we'll see how that goes. But not a lot of people want to work for free though.
Yeah, I know.
That's the problem, and unfortunately, it comes with time. But it's if you want to break into the industry, when all of us did, we had to start with our own money out of our own pocket, and still to this day, I mean, this thing is funded, from us. We don't, we've never taken sponsors on purpose though. Ours was more of a, we want to be able to say what we want to say when we want to say it. And
Good.
I can't do that with a sponsor. And we've been approached by some very, very good manufacturers. The problem is essentially, if you do anything with it, looks more like an infomercial when you're shooting an episode, and they want to dictate. But on top of the infomercial style kind of video that it looks like, they also want to censor what you say and how you say it, and they want this clean approach. And I'm not that guy, and I don't think any of us are here. We're more of the we'll call a spade, kind of thing right then and there. If I've got something to say, you never have to worry what's on my mind because I'm going to tell you right now, kind of thing.
We like 4-letter words.
Yes. We've actually been very good so far in this podcast.
Yeah.
I didn't want to pee off the Canadians right off the bat.
It's all right.
But
This one's fine.
Nice. So, and then let's just stay on this too. So there's a growing narrative right now that this program, the Buyback program, C21 and other legislation, it unfairly targets hunters and sport shooters, groups statistically among the least likely to misuse a firearm. How do we counter the claim that legal gun ownership is inherently dangerous or not dangerous?
I think it's public education. That's key. I feel like the policymakers do know. They've, heard it up and down 100 times that statistically these aren't the people causing the crimes. They've heard it from firearm experts, the industry, law enforcement. I think it's just changing how the public views us, which is going to be extremely time consuming, and it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's going to, people are going to have to start volunteering and getting more people on board. That way the policymakers aren't going to make policy that impacts hunters and sports shooters, because it wouldn't appease the public as much if they knew that that wasn't the right direction to go in. So I personally think that public education is kind of the main way we can help that and sort of help change the way policy seems to be going.
We have a program here in the U.S. Called Hunter Safety Education, which our kids, at least when I know it's still out there today, but it used to be part of our curriculum in school. So we would actually, get hands-on training, then do the hunter certification course through the local school districts here. So from the time we were young all the way up, I mean, most of us grew up in a hunting or sporting family, so we grew up around firearms. But on top of that, they were teaching firearm safety in school. It was codified in school at the same time. So, and of course back then we didn't have third person shooter games and stuff like that. I mean, none of us ever thought about going and do some crazy crap. But it's just, I agree with you. I think education's a big part of it, and I know Paul, especially with. Maybe you can weigh in, Paul. I mean, so you've got to think about that. You've got 2 young kids. You've got firearms in the house. How do you handle it from your side?
Well, obviously each person's individual. So, as they mature and they, I start approaching them around it and getting them familiar with it, and, let them know, what it does. And, again, back to the taco meat we referred to earlier, this is the firearm I use to harvest that deer on my wall that you're now eating, so it's all just a slow and gradual progression. they seem to get a little, antsy, then I'll back it off, and we just kind of mature as they mature. It's that's the thing. It has to be to me, very individualistic, right? As far as that's concerned. Now in the masses, yeah, it really has to do, like Sue, Sue Tidwell, that book of hers is just amazing as far as showing, and I'm not familiar with that, the one she does with what's it called, The Plains of Africa, Sean?
What's that?
Sue Tidwell's book, Tidwell.
Cries of the Savannah.
Yes, Cries of Savannah, when it talks about, safari hunting and all that other stuff from a non-hunter's perspective. And that she does a great job of just exposing what it's like for a non-hunter who hunts with her husband or goes on safari with her husband. And it does a really good job, like you said, of just educating, what really goes into it and the thought process behind it. And like you said, the trigger is such a fleeting moment that's, respect to the animals. It's all that other stuff. So yeah, that's a long-winded way to say very slowly, methodically, and very respectful to the animals if we're hunting, or respectful to the firearm because it is a tool.
I think you made a great point there too that I didn't bring up earlier, and it's about when we're jumping around again, but that's what we do. But hunting and respect for the animal, and I don't think people understand exactly what that's about. But for us, I kind of witnessed it firsthand. For years, I was always in front of the camera. Now I've kind of started to actually enjoy being behind the camera more and getting to hunt with Oscar and film for Paul and Oscar and see it firsthand and several other people. And I witnessed it in South Africa this year. We had one of the camera crew that came over with us. She'd never been to South Africa before, and it was her birthday while she was there. So we surprised her, and we all pitched in. And the animal that she wanted for her the most, for whatever reason, was a giraffe. And it's kind of an odd first animal for somebody, but each to their own.
That's cool though.
That's fine. I've hunted giraffe before, and so I was the A camera guy on that particular hunt. And it was so unique. And I finally saw it again when, the animal was down and she walked up with a PH, and you could see the tears running down her eye, and they stopped and they prayed together. And it was just such a cool, and I shut the camera off too. Yeah. I'm like, cause that's a personal moment. I'll talk about it, but I'll never show it on film. It was a very personal moment, but to me, I probably should have filmed it because, that's what people need to see and realize that, hey, we're emotional about this. This animal gave its life for us. And every single stitch of that meat goes to whether it's all processed, it's all distributed, it all goes somewhere. Nothing goes to waste. I mean, especially in countries and we're the same way when we process a deer. You've got a little pile like this with bones and a little bit of guts in there, and that's the extent of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything, we use everything. And I think if more people understood that, then, especially that appreciation that we show for the animal after the hunt, I think that would help a lot of people. I don't think you're ever going to convert an anti-hunter to hunting, but you may convert a non-hunter and bring them over to your side. And there's a distinction to be made there too. And in my eyes, there's three different types, right? You've got your hunter, you've got your non-hunter, and you've got your anti-hunter. So a non-hunter is a non-hunter because they chose not to be a hunter, right? So at some point in time, they've either not been given the opportunity for whatever. They're not opposed to hunting. Like Sue Tidwell, for example, the author that Paul just talked about, we had her on the podcast. She is a non-hunter. Her husband's a big time hunter. She goes with him. She films. She loves it. She's all about the culture and the people, but she just doesn't have, she doesn't have that drive to want to hunt. She just doesn't hunt, which is different than an anti-hunter. Obviously they're totally against it. And I go down, and I love it though. Some people hate it, but I love it when we call them greenies, when the greenies jump on our socials, or they see a video and they start lighting up the comment section. That's like, ooh, my turn to play. They are the least educated people in the world.
I know.
And I get it, but their argument is 100% emotional based and 0 science based. There's no science behind it whatsoever. It's 100% emotional, and I don't get it.
And it's so hard for someone to take so many of those people seriously in any capacity, because they just jump straight to complete threats, crazy threats. I've had death threats over hunting pictures, and just insults and stuff. And you try and educate, and they're just trolling, for lack of a better word. They just want to fight. So, I mean, it's great to educate them so that other people reading can learn, but those are not the kinds of people that you're ever going to convert. They just love to hate. hunting.
Yeah, and I love it though. I love confronting those. I mean, you guys have seen it.
It's
I
so
love it
fun.
on social media because I will just trash them because it's so easy too. When you're dealing with somebody that there's no actual science behind the argument, it's 100% emotional. It's they should walk around with a bullseye on their back.
Yeah.
Instead of listen, maybe research who you're making a comment to before you actually do it because I'm going to light you up like a parade candle.
Especially if you just have fun with it and they're like clearly getting upset. It's like, oh
Right.
my God, why are you taking this so seriously, man? It's social media. Like,
Well, and
I'm
that's
still
what
going to do what I do.
I can see it. You can see the tone of the language start to get more aggressive and more aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see it in the text itself. It's not as enunciated as it once was, and there's slang and jargon and you can tell they're off their rocker just mad. And you'll make a comment, and like 37 seconds later, there's a response there. I love it because I just stir the pot the whole time. And unfortunately, it's great for social media. The more people that comment, the more people that you start looking at that stuff, the more people that you get to watch your content. And
Yeah.
I don't shy away from it. I try to educate people when I see that. I don't know that it ever works, but I try to give them facts, right?
I think that's important.
Yeah, and if you can, if you come to somebody with facts and they still don't want to see it, you're never going to convert them. It's still fun though. I still like doing it, but
And I mean, the thing is, it lives on in the comment section. So other people are scrolling through that comment section reading, and they might be open to actually, accepting these facts. So they'll read it. And at the end of the conversation, you just have to thank them for all the engagement because that's pushing your post out to more and more people.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's
Yeah,
exactly right. And like
that drives them wild.
I know. Well, and especially if you close with that, hey, hey, buddy, or hey, what, lady.
Hey, friend.
I really want to thank you. This post has gone nuts because of all of our back and forth, and you've really helped this one go off, and now it's going viral, and it's perfect. Thanks a bunch, and that will shut them down instantly.
Yeah.
I like the ones that do they go and leave a mean comment. And then they'll come back and you'll respond to them. And then they'll put like a 3-word, F you or something like that. And then instantly block. So you can't respond.
Yeah.
To the comment.
So
come
weird.
on. Yeah, grow us that. Come on, people. What is that crap about? But all right. Well, we went down a rabbit hole again. That's kind of what we do. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about hunting.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on, do you have anything? I mean, because you're at the forefront of Canadian gun laws, and you're right in the mix. So, is there anything else? As Americans, we don't see this stuff. Like I had to do a lot of, and we do hear some of it, right? Especially now that with Trump being in office, and I didn't realize there was a giant fentanyl problem coming from Canada into the U.S., but apparently that's actually a real thing.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, when's the last time you heard about? I mean, occasionally you'll hear something about Canadia's gun laws or Canada.
Canada. I listen to a lot of like Cam Hands and Hands, like Black Bear in Vancouver or something, I think. And I listened to one podcast and they have some sort of same thing, gun issue with black bears and everything.
Well, I know Shocky's pretty. He's outspoken about it too.
But they have like this weird like. The people who like voted against black bear hunting were like people from like Vancouver, like city, and like it only like affected like people living in like the rural environment on there. Like you don't deal with bears every single day like we do, kind of thing on there. So like your interaction with a black bear isn't like mine. You might see one on the side of the road, but like we see them in our yard every single day. That's that's what I've like seen on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a legit. I mean, that's a good point, and that's what happens here in the States too during election time. We just for me, the past 4 years have been one of the worst periods in American history that I can actually remember during the Biden administration. And it was clear that more so than ever during not this election, but the prior that. Too often those major metro areas, the Chicagos of the world, the New York Cities of the world, which are a very small portion from a land perspective, they have way too much to say in what goes on. That they have 3% of the land, but they're making a decision for the other 97% of the people that are out there farming and living in it every day. Most of these people, some people live their entire life and never go outside the city.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty common. People that aren't impacted or educated on the subject are the ones that get the majority of the vote.
So back on topic, Sean,
Thank you, Paul.
As far as gun rights, what do you think? What can Canadians do, or fellow Americans do, or fellow hunters and conservationists do to help out on that side?
Definitely just becoming more aware. There are so many people at the gun range or in the hunting community that I communicate with that are very unaware of what's going on in Canada, what regulations exist, what prohibitions exist, what's coming down the pipeline, and just kind of speaking out. Like, don't be afraid to talk to people about this. There's so many people that don't have an opinion either way about guns or hunting, but they're still voters. So at least educating them on the fact that it's not legal gun owners committing the crimes. It's our insane catch and release policy. And we just had a guy released on bail, I believe it was last week. No, he was arrested for attempted murder, but he was out on bail after 3 attempted murders. So, like, this is the kind of stuff that's fueling our crime. But since the government says, we're banning legal guns, people all applaud and say, good, gun crime's going to go away.
So criminals don't buy their guns legally?
It's weird, eh? Like, it's odd how many people don't. They don't require daily background checks and a strict licensing that takes like a year to obtain. And yeah, I know it's nuts. Just educating is the huge thing. Educate yourself, educate the public, friends and family, volunteer for the organizations. And, like, there's range days out there that happen. Volunteer for those. There's a lot of great hunting groups that try and get the community out hunting. Sign your kids up for those. Try and encourage kids' friends to join those. Just try and get people involved and at least educated if they don't want to get involved.
That's But fortunately, I don't have to deal with that. Right? We were very close. We were, if I believe if our election had gone the other way, we would have been right there in the same.
That was
boat.
scary. Yeah, I think so.
It was definitely going that way. The tide had shifted for sure, and I saw a future that did not look bright.
The statements that I saw during like your election about like the anti-gun statements, I was like, oh shit, you guys are going down the same road we're going down.
Yeah, I think we've
been
able to walk that back since January 20th, though,
yeah.
in a quick way.
A little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, let's push on towards. Let's go to another topic. Let's talk about hunting a little bit.
Yeah.
So, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Canadian hunters right now, especially with some provinces now proposing new restrictions on different types of hunting?
Yeah. So a huge one that a lot of people aren't aware of. It's actually a global initiative. But in Canada, it's called the 30 by 30 initiative, and it is to conserve 30% of the country's land and water by the year 2030. But by conserve, they mean that they're going to cut off, hunting, fishing, extracting any resources. There's even prohibitions on, ATVing and sledding on this land. And a lot of the land that's currently being consumed by this 30 by 30 initiative is land that is primarily used for hunting and fishing. So people are going to lose access to places that they can go and harvest this meat and hunt, which is then going to, completely destroy the population. It's going to just mess with population control, our economy. Other than 30 by 30, I think gun bans are just probably as impactful, if not more, because you might own like a specific firearm that isn't prohibited. You might, it's going to be prohibited really far down the road. You're safe to use it. But the fact that all of these guns are being prohibited and less people have options to go and buy, it's increasing the cost of ammunition and guns that already do exist. Canada doesn't really manufacture their own firearms. They don't really manufacture their own ammunition. Like we have a really, really small market. So we do rely on buying from the States. And the fact that these businesses can buy less now or have to buy less now because so much of their stock is prohibited increases their, shipping and decreases their buying power. So the stuff that they bring in is so much more expensive. And I see so many Canadians now saying that they just can't afford to go to the range to shoot or afford to go out and hunt and, buy the ammunition and spend money on the rifle that they might want because it's so much more expensive now. So gun bans and 30 by 30.
If Trump drops that 25% tariff on y'all, it's going to be even worse than that.
I know. for that like 24 hours that it was kind of like big in the media. There was a bit of a buying frenzy here, people trying to
Oh,
buy
I
up
can imagine.
ammunition. Now they've
I
got
can
30
imagine.
days to panic buy.
I often wonder, you talked about your 30-30 program and
Yeah.
cutting off, what is what I would assume is public lands for recreational use.
Yeah.
I, for whatever reason, it seems like these decisions are never made by a biologist. They're always made by somebody else, and they don't understand, especially from a conservation perspective now, that native habitat, we've interfered, right? So
Yeah.
we've interrupted the normal migratory patterns of these animals. We've encroached on their land. We've changed the way they behave. So because we've done that, it's up to us to regulate the animals and to conserve the animals. And without hunters and recreational and outdoor enthusiasts, that doesn't happen. Yeah, in the U.S., there's a longstanding bill. I believe, Paul, you're going to fact check me on this one too. I believe it's called the Roseman-Pittman Act. It was enacted in either 1937 or 1939, which put a tax on any hunting outdoor activity. So it's guns, it's ammo, it's any archery, it's pretty much anything to do with outside. And it's a very small number that people don't even see when you go to buy a firearm. You don't even realize it's in there, but it contributes something like $1.8 billion a year in the U.S.
Oh,
that goes back into conservation
okay.
programs. Yeah, and it's a fantastic program that most people don't even realize. Like I said, it's almost 100 years old now.
Yeah, Pittman
Okay.
Robertson, I think it's built into the cost of firearm ammunition and anything
Yeah.
in sporting outdoor activities. I believe it goes to the states, and then anything that's not used by the states goes to, I think, like federal duck management. But yeah.
Yeah, so hunters completely fuel all of the science, financially fuel, all of the science and everything behind conservation. They are our main conservationists. I mean, here we have to fill out a hunter's report, which I know is similar in other countries. At the end of turkey season, I have to say how many turkeys I've seen, how many I've harvested. And that's just helping, feed data back to these conservationists or the main bodies. So yeah, I don't think people really understand just how beneficial and essential hunters are.
For the 30-30 thing in Canada, what's their like rationale? Like how are they like what's the justification for taking away even like the using of like outdoor activities, like you're saying, like the skiing, four-wheeling, saying things like that?
They haven't, it's not very like it's not out there in the media, so I don't think they've really had to rationalize it all that much. A lot of it is saying that they're going to protect this land for indigenous only hunting. A lot of it is just sort of like the messaging out there is saying that the amount of land that we do have is decreasing because of commercial building. So that's why they want to protect it. But I mean, they can just protect it against commercial building. They don't need to kick hunters and dirt bikers off.
That's a zoning regulation that you put in place to prevent it from happening. Conservation easements. You can't build on conservation easements. That's easy. Okay. 15 minutes and we can fix this problem.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, they haven't had to rationalize it that much yet because nobody's questioning it. I think there's a lot of people that aren't aware of it. I became aware of it a couple of years ago when I was at a parliamentary symposium that I went to, Parliament Hill in Canada. A few of the conservative MPs were teaching us about this and warning us about how the Liberals want to implement it. So, I mean, since it is a global initiative, like it's impacting the States, it's impacting Europe. But it's just not talked about that much.
And we thought it was bad here.
I know.
Well, and like I said, we were within a day of it probably being that bad.
Yeah.
If election day had gone any different, I think they were trying to kill a bunch of these programs, and unfortunately, it's the bleeding heart liberal side of things. You can't make decisions that way, but they constantly do. And I don't know if you guys have been following the Doge thing here with Elon and what's been going on with our government and cutting all the wasteful spending. Like Elon has pissed everybody off now, and that guy, and he doesn't care, but rightfully so. When you see these spending programs that these liberals put into place, It's ridiculous. And I didn't want to make this about politics in the U.S., but it just happened to come up accidentally. But have you seen the like the millions of dollars to transgender programs in Guatemala and just...
I've seen that. Also, what I do love is what now since we're talking to a Canadian. Is it Pierre
Poilievre?
His riffs and stuff on Instagram are hilarious. His stuff in Parliament is quite funny. Of just people being like, oh, we need to help. We need to be green and everything, and they all fly in on private planes to all these different places. He's really good at
calling out the government on just their like lack of common sense and their hypocrisy, but in a funny kind of way that really makes people remember what he said.
That video. You need to Instagram that over to me.
I'll send you. There's a video of him eating an apple, just like destroying a reporter.
That's a very popular one.
Hilarious.
Nice. You know more about Canada than I do.
I want to go to Canada to hunt, but I can't.
I've hunted in Canada before. I've bear hunted there, Matachewan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but it was easier to get firearms across back then. So this was prior to 2023. So
yeah,
it was still a pain in the ass. Not so much. It's easy. Well, I should say that it was easy to get back into the U.S., but getting over and having to deal with the mounted police and all the paperwork and everything, even prior to 2023, was a pain in the ass. And then if you did harvest an animal, so you've got the cape and the skull and everything, before you got to the U.S. side, you had to go through all the agriculture paperwork and conservation paperwork and all that other stuff. I mean, you could be sitting, whether you came across in Toronto or you came across in Detroit or something like that, you may sit there for hours until somebody decided to, okay, I'm off break now. Now I can look at your stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they found they almost had us in handcuffs. Coming to, there was a live 9mm round. Just most Americans have, there's one floating around in the back of Paul's truck.
Honestly, same here. Yeah, like the center console of my truck is full of God knows what, a mix match.
And we knew, everybody told us don't bring a pistol. You can bring your long bolt action guns. I think at that time we were limited to maybe 2 in the mag and 1 in the chamber, or maybe it was 4 in 1. But absolutely do not bring a handgun with you. Clean your truck out. Make sure there's no line. And there, sure enough, they found a single 9mm FMJ round, and I thought we were going to Canadian prison. They were mean. Like those guys were serious about it. And then you drive over these little bumpy things, so they've got the cameras that go and look under the vehicle and everything.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it's I loved it once I got there. That was the only, to God's honest truth, and Matachewan is way the hell, you go through Toronto and then just keep driving for like another 10 hours kind of thing. And I think it was Queensland or something they called it, all the big forestry tracts that were owned by the Queen at one point in time, and we hunted on like 2 million acres or something. But once you got outside of Toronto, it was fantastic. Like the people were nice. I had a great time. That little run-in at the border was the only thing that I've ever had. Now, I certainly don't recommend to people, yeah, if you can go do the, the Niagara Falls touristy stuff if you want to, if you're going to go in on that side. But
I've done that.
Go over and then come right back kind of thing. But that's too touristy for me. But when you get, like I said, when you get up to the rural areas, some of the nicest people in the world. I mean, just give you the shirt off their back. Yeah, they have an accent, but they said I have an accent too. So who the hell am I to throw stones? I was saying a bunch when I came back though. After being there for 2 weeks, yeah, it was more of a joke.
Assimilated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have something? I saw you were writing something down there.
No, actually, I was just talking about the 30/30 initiative. I'd never even heard of it before. So what are we doing stateside about it, right? Now that we mentioned it, so need to do a little digging off camera and see what was happening on our side. Because the global initiative.
I've got the fix. Just make Canada a state.
Oh,
Problem solved. There we go. Problem solved.
50,
yeah, I won't complain about inheriting your gun rights whatsoever. I won't complain about that.
51, it's easy. I mean, come on. And most people want it now. I don't think most people want it.
I don't know.
Well, if the majority, like I said, I guess a lot of pass like under the table, but if it's, an actual public, but it's not an actual public vote. Like we have amendments that are voted on by the general public. Is that not how it works there? Or do you just Parliament, once it gets to Parliament, they decide what happens?
Yep, that's it. Parliament decides what happens. It goes through Parliament, goes to Senate. Unfortunately, Senate is supposed to be apolitical, but it is stocked with extreme, left-wing supporters that have donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Liberal Party. So in Senate, not like they're going to be very friendly to the hunting and firearms community. So yeah, it just goes through our government, and it is what it is.
So how does it work in Canada? I know you have individual provinces and everything, and then I'm guessing you guys have a parliament and all that. But like, what is like the structure in Canada?
Like, you mean of the political parties or voter bases?
So like, let's say I
We
live
have
in
a three-part. We have the judicial, executive, and legislative branch.
yeah, but like the we have like Florida, hunting regulations, but then there's also federal hunting regulations. Is it like does Alberta have different hunting stuff?
Yes.
And then there's
Yeah, so there are like base regulations that are federal, and then each province has their own regulations, kind of depending on, well, even there's wildlife management units within those provinces that regulate, what kind of firearm you can use, what kind of species you can harvest, how many, what method, what kind of ammunition, all of that kind of stuff.
that was kind of what I was getting at, is like, oh, like this is the federal band on there, but if you go to this, you might be able to hunt in Vancouver, but you can't hunt Alberta with the same kind of gun.
Well, yeah. Is that how it works? So if they ban something, I'll call it federally because that's how we think about our government here, federal versus state. So if your government says, okay, we ban this firearm, but can a province override that and say no, it's fine here?
No, they cannot, unfortunately. So once it's federally banned, it's just Canada wide.
But a gun in like one province may be banned in another one.
Nope. Any gun that's banned, it's just like banned Canada wide. There's so when I say they regulate what kind of firearms you can use, for instance, in my wildlife management unit, I can only use a shotgun or a muzzleloader to hunt deer. But if I drive, an hour west of me, I could use rifle if I wanted.
We have the same kind of things here in the
So
States.
yeah, it's kind of like that.
Ohio versus Florida.
Yeah. Well, and no, that's a perfect example. So we have a farm in Ohio, and then right across the Ohio River, we have another one in Kentucky. In the state of Ohio, you can't hunt with a center-fired rifle cartridge. It has to, you can, but it has to be a straight-walled cartridge. So like a 4570
Okay.
or something like that. You can literally drive across the Ohio River and go in the state of Kentucky and whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You could bring a 50 BMG if you wanted to. Nobody cares.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and you can see it literally from my farm in Kentucky. You can see Ohio right there. It's like, that's the stupidest thing in the world. Come on, guys. And they're not. That's the thing. Ohio's not a liberal state. I mean, our vice president came from Ohio. They voted for Trump, but Kentucky, their governor is a Democrat. How does that work? That's one of the most rural.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, weird stuff. All right. So, yeah, I mean, so you've already, so also too, and if you don't know anything about it, that's fine. But when I was researching this, so you guys have also got some trophy hunting bans that are, and this may be the question you weren't sure about. So I apologize if I just threw that on you. We can edit that out.
No,
but
it's okay.
yeah, so you've got some supposed trophy hunting bans coming down the line or in Parliament already, that are regulating already. Apparently, some provinces have banned trophy hunting in its entirety.
I don't know about banning trophy hunting in its entirety. I understand that there are prohibitions coming or maybe already in place. I mean, I don't quote unquote trophy hunt or go on like safari hunts or anything like that. But I do believe there's either an import or export prohibition on trophies into Canada. Which, I mean, I think that's just like completely built off of, public feeling. There's so much emotion around.
There's an import ban. So if you're,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I have heard a little bit about this, and I should probably research it a lot more. But there is something trophy hunting related, either import or export. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Well, we can Paul's got
Yeah, we
that on his
can.
list. There's checking in the background right now. Are you gonna be our Jamie for this episode, Paul?
Tag them it.
So, I mean, I guess going back to it, from a hunting perspective, so is your belief that policymakers, I mean, to me, it sounds like your policymakers don't fully understand conservation and the benefits that hunters bring to the table. And now I don't want to speak for you, but that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, totally. I think that they don't understand it, and I think it's both. I think what they do understand, they just don't care. Like they understand that conservation is beneficial. They understand that hunters aren't contributing to our rising rate of violent crime, but I don't think they care enough because we're such a small voting base. Like we're not going to be voting for the liberals that are imposing these bans anyways. So why care about what they impose onto us? So there's a huge lack of education. I mean, we talk to policymakers all the time through CSAAA, and the policies that they write, so many policies that they are so ignorant on that it is scary. Like it's like you have to think, like, how did these people even come into this position? But they don't care enough to do the research. Like the research is readily available. The people that are educated on it and the policy experts or industry experts are begging to be heard. They don't want to talk to them. When they do, it's kind of like in one ear and out the other. So I think it's a combination of them just not caring and not understanding.
Do you have, like here in the States, we have the NRA along with several other groups. Is that a thing in Canada too? Do you have, some kind of body like that will actively fight for gun rights and hunting regulations and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So the group that I'm with is CSAAA, and that is like the state's NSSF. So we are the industry organization. Our main focus is the gun businesses within Canada. There's also CSSA, NFA, which is not the United States NFA, it's the Canadian
National
NFA.
Firearms Act, not that.
No, exactly. National Firearms Association, and then there's CCFR. Those are the three main consumer groups, and they are a voice for, the sports shooters, the hunters. They help put on a bunch of, like range days, public activities, public events to try and, gain awareness, gain activity within the environment, within the community. So yeah, we do have, I'd say, three main consumer groups, and then CSAAA being the industry organization.
So, and I assume those groups lobby, for
Definitely, all of them.
And so, and that's one thing we have here. Obviously, we have the NRA, but in all of, I think the thing that we have going for us too is we've got groups, not only NRA, we've got the NWTF, which is the National Wild Turkey Foundation.
Yeah.
We've got, NADAR for deer farmers and just the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and just on and on and on, all these, and they're big too. I mean, hunting's such a big part of our society that, these organizations, they don't make millions a year. Some of them rack in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, especially the NRA. That's a big organization here. Safari Club International.
We do have an SCI Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another big one, and they spend a lot of money. I know, they come over. South African countries come over once a year to lobby for Congress, and SCI is right there along the way. And then we've got smaller, groups like Dallas Safari Club and Houston Safari Club and stuff like that too. But Ducks Unlimited, there's another one.
Jen, do you think some of the problems in like Canada are that like people just think like, oh, like all these rights are like just like given, like because I didn't know any of these things. I just thought like, yeah, like as long as I can save up enough money, like I'll just go to Canada. Like everyone seems like, Canada's like mountain man, and like, yeah, like I'm gonna go look. Go to the Yukon, look for a giant 50-inch bull moose.
Yeah, and I mean that would be amazing. Were you asking like, are the rights kind of like we just assume that we have these rights, I guess?
Yeah, like I do. Like especially like American hunters, we just like assume that like no, like one day we'll all be able to go to Canada. Like it, like the laws are the same, right? Like that's what I thought. It's just like, oh yeah, like the only thing stopping me from Canada is my bank account, not the rule,
I
not the laws.
yeah,
That
I
bush plane and that float get expensive up there.
I think that is a huge misconception from like our own citizens, as well as other countries, because hunters and sport shooters are like the most restricted people. I mean, it is challenging to get your firearms license down here. You have to do a course, you have to do a test, you have to submit document to the RCMP and wait like a year for them to do all of their background checks, their screening. You have to give like a list of references, any spouses that you had in the past 5 or 10 years to actually get the firearms license to begin with. Um, we're very limited as to what kind of guns we can own, where we can hunt, what we can hunt. I think that, yeah, people aren't really aware of. We're not, true north, strong and free. We're not, we're not super free down here.
Yeah, I thought that was like, just listening to the conversation. I thought that was like crazy because I'm not looking to hunt in like Toronto. I'm trying to
Right?
I'm trying to like go to the middle of nowhere. Like it's literally me and my guide. Like what are you talking
Yeah,
about?
you're going to fly into Toronto. You're going to take another regional flight, and then
Yeah.
from there you're going to take a bush plane in. Yeah, and then you're going to spike camp for 2 weeks, and you
Right.
go chase your moose or your caribou. But yeah, that unfortunately that could come to an end shortly. And
Yeah.
that's big business too for Canada. There's a lot. I mean, I know I've hunted Canada several times. I know a lot of people, and Saskatchewan, for example, is huge whitetail country. There are giant whitetail that come out of there. There's 200-inch whitetail. It's like they almost grow on trees there for whatever reason.
Big body.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Canada could just be like so much better for hunting, or it could contribute so much more to our economy if we didn't make it so hard for legitimate legal hunters from other countries to come in and actually hunt. I mean, this 30 by 30 and the firearm regulations and the major restrictions on species we can hunt are really impacting the outfitters that, provide for the economy, provide jobs, support the actual market in Canada through tourism and everything. So
Yeah, and it's not cheap to run those
oh
operations
my
either. I
goodness,
mean,
no.
they are incredibly expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a full-time job. It's not just not through hunting season. I mean, as we all know now, I mean, it's 365.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a legitimate industry, it's a legitimate career, it's, a legitimate way of life. And unfortunately, our government's making it harder and harder for that to live on.
Isn't it interesting, Sean, that we had the hunter rather from Australia, and the only thing challenging to us was getting there, right? Because they hunt 365. He started listing all these animals I never knew we could hunt there, but it was just a matter. It was a pocketbook getting us there. And now when we try and go to Canada, and it's got great hunting, but it's the regulations that are stopping us to getting
Yeah.
us there. So it's
Our
definitely
neighbor, we can't go hunt it. We can't go on our neighbor's place, but we can fly 15,000 miles or the other side of the world, and we can go hunt there with open arms. Just yes, please come do.
Isn't
Yeah,
it
they're begging
crazy?
for us to try to get over there and get it established. And you got, South Africa who's got it on lock, and as far as conservation and understanding the economy and how much it affects it, the whole world should be looking at them and seeing how much money and revenue that, again, like everything else, money drives everything, right? If they saw how much money came in on tourism, not just hunting tourism, but other tourisms, you think the world would embrace it, But,
You would think.
I think you made a good point. If you look at hunting as a business rather than as a stomping mat for liberals to get pissy about, and if you treat it like a business, there's money to be made in this industry, and lots of it. I mean, people are willing to pay. I mean, I do, you do. I mean, we all do. We want to go there, and for me, if I know I could just, hey, I'll just hop a flight, I'll be in Saskatchewan in no time, or I can go to Saskatchewan and hunt a bear, or I can go to Alberta, or just on and on and on. For us, it's easy. We fly. The flight just to Joburg alone is 15 and a half hours to 16 and a half hours, depending on the tailwind, just to go there. I can be in Toronto in like 3.5 hours from here, something like that. Yeah. I mean, that's all of a sudden that's attainable. I mean, and it's not that it's unattainable the other way, but by God, I mean, it just,
More attainable.
yeah, our own neighbors should be. But then again, I guess in retrospect, if I look at the southern border, I probably don't want to go down there and hunt.
Scary.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they've got some of the biggest mule deer in the world.
Yeah, big coos deer.
Yeah, coos deer too. But going back, so we talked about not advocating for, but using education as, as a way, as a strategy to advocate for hunting and firearms within the community. Is there anything else that you guys are doing or that you can do? I mean, because it's so politically charged there, right? Like,
Mhm.
is that what it is for you guys now? It's just about educating, not only children but everybody, just huge educational programs, and try to say, hey, this is what's really going on, or is there more to it than that?
I think there's definitely more people can do. We saw proof of it during Bill C21 whenever they first came out with this huge list of semi-automatic firearms that they were going to prohibit that were, legitimate hunting and sport shooting firearms. Um, we had letter writing campaigns. Like there were thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across Canada writing their MPs, writing policymakers on a daily to weekly basis, speaking out against these regulations. Um, the gun ranges, the gun stores, they all had letter writing tables so that any consumer can just go in and, sign their name off on this pre-made letter, write their own, send it to the government. And it made a change. It made a temporary change. Those amendments, or that got amended in Bill C21, and those bans got removed from Bill C21. Um, because of all of the public pressure that was being put on these MPs who, I mean, they need the public's vote to keep their jobs. So I think that just being active with your local government is extremely important, because if they push all these bans through and nobody says anything, even the conservatives or right wing that are kind of opposed to these prohibitions, that's not going to be at the top of their priority list, because they think, well, we're not hearing from our citizens. They obviously don't care about it. Why are we going to focus on that? So yeah, I think a lot of people say like, oh, there's no point in me writing my MP. Like they're going to do what they want to do anyway. But we saw in Bill C21 that that's not true. And I think if people kept the pressure on, then we wouldn't be seeing the orders in council that we're seeing right now to this extent. So yeah, be active with your government.
It's so unique, Paul. What I was just thinking while Jen was talking is, there's is such a different dichotomy when we just had a guest on from Australia, right? That was, well, I'll put it this way. So you're a staunch supporter, and you believe that everybody should be able to own firearms, legal firearms, and then there's a process, and I feel like that's okay so long as you can possess them. It's fine. It was weird in Australia. He was totally different in that he grew up in an environment because they had firearms bans going back. Paul, you're going to fact check me on this. I believe it was 1995 when that mass shooting was. And like overnight, they just outlawed everything. So he's grown up in environments in the 90s. So he's never been in a place where like you can't own a pistol there. You can, but it's a very select, kind of like you guys, there's a very select amount of people that can. And to him, it was like, oh, it's no big deal. That's just an American thing. You guys running around with AKs and everything else. He's like, we're still allowed to buy hunting rifles, and that's all we need. And I'm like, man, you like what happens? I mean, whatever happened to oppression of tyranny and right to bear arms and stuff like that? I mean, I felt like we were close here in the States, but it's weird. Like, and he like I said, he was a great guest. We really liked him, but it's just so weird to see
Just
the
a
difference
totally different
between,
area.
yeah, well, and in very similar context, though, the government said hell with it. They just banned everything. It was a blanket
Yeah.
ban, but he's like, oh yeah, it's fine. And then we have no gun crime. I'm like, what do you mean you have no gun crime? And they don't. They have like next to no gun crime. However, I don't think they had a bunch of gun crime to begin with. I think they had the one bad incident, and they said the hell with this shit, and they cut it all off. But I don't think, and like I said, we'll have to fact check that too. I may have to issue a retraction because I just threw Australia under the bus for something that wasn't accurate. But it is interesting, these other countries and how they react. And like I said, you're so passionate about it, right? And you want to protect everybody's freedom to, they're essentially like us, the right to bear arms. And to me, it's a no brainer. Having Paul served, I served, most of the Salt Lake group has served. I can't imagine living in a country or place where we don't have access to firearms to, at a minimum, protect our family.
Yeah.
And it just, to me, but we had the same conversation, with our buddy from Australia. He's like, why do we need to protect our family? We don't have any gun crime. I'm like, Yeah, that's not where we are though. And that's you touched on it earlier. Most of the violent crime that's committed is being perpetrated by those who are already felons. They're in the system. They're not legal gun owners. So and we all get trashed for that. Even in in the US it's the same thing. I mean, that's the vast majority of the people that are committing crimes are people that are already not supposed to have firearms to begin with.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it we see also is people with severe mental health issues that, I mean, they would have never been approved for a firearm anyways, because there was, documented red flags. And these are the people committing the crimes because, there's not enough mental health outreach out there. It's expensive. It's hard to obtain. Whenever there are reports, people calling in concerned about so-and-so owning a firearm, it's never acted on. So it's just people needing to actually enforce laws that already exist instead of just making these grandiose announcements about, gun bans and ruthlessly attaching them to a tragedy that wouldn't have been prevented because of these firearm prohibitions to begin with.
Come back. She may be on Starlink.
Oh no, I think I lost you guys.
So
there. I hope I didn't.
while we're getting her back, 1996 was Australia.
96. Okay. There she is. Now you're
Am
back.
I back yet? Oh no, I
Yes.
saw that. We have a big
No, you're-
snowstorm here, so
Oh, okay. I was wondering if you had Starlink or not. If Elon,
I
was
do
pissed
have
off at Canada.
Starlink. I hope he's not
Right.
pissed off.
There it is. Yeah. Well, we're not talking bad about you, Elon. If you're listening on our conversation.
Yeah, Elon, please don't mess with my internet right now.
Yeah. So no. Let's go back to that because if you can remember where you were, because it was a good tie-in to what we were talking about.
Yeah, where did I leave off? I don't know where it dropped.
Paul.
I was researching, man. I had two brain cells, and they were both researching.
Oh
I
my
don't know.
goodness, yeah. My one brain cell is trying to think of what we were just talking about.
We're talking about like criminals were the ones. With
Yeah,
guns and all that, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're specifically on the mental health, how your police force does not act upon like people. Being like, hey,
yes,
that guy
that's
should not
exactly
have a
it.
gun.
So other than, repeat offenders being main contributors to the rising violent crime, it's a lot of people that have extreme mental health struggles that don't have the resources, don't have the proper outreach. Any mental health support in Canada is extremely hard to obtain, extremely expensive. And if a spouse, ex-spouse, or anybody like a neighbor calls and says, hey, I'm concerned about so-and-so owning a firearm, it's often not acted upon until there's an incident. So it's it's just kind of odd to see them not seeing that connection.
I see where you're coming from on that, and this is the part where I piss people off that follow us, because I do have a different take on this. I agree with you. I don't think in the U.S. there's enough, not necessarily money spent on mental health. I don't think we do a good enough job in regulating firearm sales based on mental health. So anybody can go in and fill out the background check form, right? Yeah. So if you've not been in the system before, you can pass background check. That means you can go and buy a gun. The problem that we're seeing is, especially in young adults, is they're going by firearms or they're acquiring them from their parents. And these are people that have no business owning a firearm. So there's no mental background check that we have to go through. And like I said, this is definitely going to piss people off. I can see it in the comments already. It's just my personal opinion is that I wish there was a way, for us in the U.S. to say, hey, listen, you probably don't need to own a gun.
And I think people, I'm not sure, but I think people get so defensive about that point because that is something. We do get mental health background checks to a certain extent here in Canada.
But with that said, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt one.
No, do.
I am a huge proponent of the Second Amendment. Just so everybody knows, I will absolutely fight to the death to protect your gun rights. I just think there ought to be a little bit better vetting system when it comes to mental health. Okay.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree with that also. And I think people just jump to the conclusion that, as soon as you're diagnosed with, let's say, PTSD, anxiety, depression, whatever it may be, that you shouldn't own a gun. But that's not the case. Like, there's different stages, there's different levels. Some people with PTSD, anxiety, depression can 100% handle, having a firearm, living a very normal life. And then there's some people that have, more extreme struggles. And those people maybe just shouldn't be in possession of a firearm until they get the proper help.
Right. No, I agree 100%. That was worded perfectly too, by the way. It's almost
Well,
like you've said that before.
In different words. I'm perfecting it.
I like it.
the
So,
problem you run into with that is people don't want. There's not a doctor out there that says you're cured,
Yeah.
right? I mean, from from the other side of the house, dealing with my previous employment, that was a problem. A lot of people didn't want to say, okay, I have an issue, because then they're on this registry, they're on something, and then trying to get off that registry, or some doctor saying, well, I'm going to lose money, so I'm never going to say you're cured. And I'm not saying all doctors are like that, but there's that stigma of being once labeled, always labeled. Then there's a stigma of the healthcare system going, oh, I can continue to make money off this guy, gal, or whatever.
100%.
So that then I can never get, quote unquote cured, or at least relieved in order to get that firearm back. So that's the downside of that.
And now that you mention that, I do often see in forums and even on Facebook, people that already have firearms, they have a gun license. They're hesitant to go for help with even minor mental health issues because they're afraid that that's going to cause any backlash and have them lose their guns or lose their ability to own firearms. So yeah, it definitely goes both ways. I mean, having that in place has really discouraged a few people from seeking the help that they might need.
dang, Paul, that was good. Jen hit a home run and you followed it up with
Yeah.
a triple. That was back to back. That's good stuff right there. A little baseball analogy. If I had any hockey ones, I'd throw it out there too.
That's all right. I'm not.
I watched 30 seconds. My hockey is limited to whatever comes on PTI or Sports Center.
The only thing I know is power play.
Yeah.
I just
man down.
enjoyed the first 3 fights yesterday, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to go watch something.
Listen, okay, full honesty, full disclosure, the only reason I watch hockey is for the fights, just like the only reason I would
Totally.
ever watch a NASCAR race is for the wrecks. That's it. That's the only I could give a shit about the rest of it. I like to see him fight and I like to see him wreck. Other than that, it's boring to me.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But all right, are we through with the hunting stuff? Can we get on to some of the other stuff? Do you have anything, Oscar, that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I do want to ask is we were talking about like Canadian industry and firearms and everything, hunting, is how big of a market is that in Canada? Like,
It was a lot larger. CSAAA did studies, to see back in 2018 how many firearm businesses existed, what it contributes to the economy. So, I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar contribution, but we are, and I mean, it's nowhere near as large as the States. I mean, the States has a huge firearms and hunting market, but I mean, Canada's firearm and hunting market is very impactful as well. Unfortunately, since the prohibitions we've seen come through since May 2020, there's been a huge decline in that market. We're seeing gun businesses shut down all over the map. We're seeing gun ranges shut down because people can't buy new handguns to go out. Ammunition's way more expensive, so they're not entering the competitions or going out and blowing through hundreds of rounds like they used to. So, I mean, yeah, it was a big market. I think it's still a fairly large market, but unfortunately, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but these prohibitions are definitely harming that market.
I feel like they were intentional.
100%.
Yeah, I'm calling there. That's
yeah, exactly. I don't see many tears whenever I try to advocate to the Liberals and say, like, listen, you're causing all this like job loss and people to lose their generational businesses. It's just, yeah, I don't really see them feeling too bad about that.
Yeah, I can't imagine a world where I had to deal with that crap every day.
that's great.
But we were close. Like I said, once again, I digress.
Yeah.
We were close.
Absolutely.
Well, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the Huntsman. You mentioned him a couple of times, right?
Mr. Chris. Yep.
Chris, yes. And I'm sorry, I'm horrible with names. So
Chris
anyway,
Waters.
Chris Waters. But he was,
Shout out, Chris.
yeah.
Shameless plug for the Huntsman
Yeah.
TV show.
That's
you should
awesome.
definitely go check that out. Great guy.
Yeah.
Great show.
Yeah. But, he was happy, right? That's the thing, too. In his world, that gun regulation and stuff worked for him in his bubble. So, we talk about that, and, in Okeechobee, Florida, or wherever we live here in the United States, or wherever we live in Canada or Detroit, we also have to realize we all kind of live in a certain bubble. So, you can't really, it works for him, right? So it doesn't work for other people, but it definitely works for him, and he can sleep well at night. night. So again, I didn't want to go off on a bad note, for as far as Chris is concerned, it seems to work for him in his country, whereas us, it would never work. But that's part of this conversation we're having. Canada's dealing with it. They're at that battleground of which way they're going to go, with the Australian side or the American side, kind of a thing. So that's where it's
It
at.
sounds very much like, I mean, it could go, Canada could be the next Australia from a gun rights perspective.
Right.
I know.
They had to surrender firearms. It was like mandatory, they didn't have a choice kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It was over a single incident, right, Paul? It was a school shooting, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sad that they tie these prohibitions to the shootings, because, I mean, they do the same thing in Canada. Like the May 2021 was tied to the Nova Scotia shooting. The one that they passed through December 6th, they tied it to the anniversary of, one other shooting that happened in Canada. The shootings are so few and far between, but they tie them to tragedies like that because then they can demonize anybody that speaks out against them.
And they do the same. The liberals in the U.S. do the same thing too. I don't want to take this out of context, but it almost sounds like, anytime they're just waiting for something bad to happen to use that. See, I told you, if we would have had stiffer gun, but the gun rights or the programs that they've proposed, it wouldn't have kept that person from legally owning or possessing a firearm. Some things are, I mean, I would rather spend money protecting our kids at school and putting you do a better job with law enforcement. And if you had to, and I hate to say it, but maybe we're at a place, I couldn't imagine going to school when I was a kid and having to walk through a magnetometer to go in to make sure I wasn't carrying a firearm. Unfortunately, for a lot of these places, that's the reality of it now. I mean, and how far is too far to protect our kids? I think there is nothing. There's no such thing as too far. I mean, you do whatever you can do. And, but like I said, especially with the leftist side, you get that, once again, it's the emotional piece, right? There's no science back. There's no anything. So, they quickly go to emotion and they play on people's emotion during those mass tragedies or any kind of tragedy. And, what they propose, it's bull. It's never going to keep those guns out of those people's hands to begin with. Listen, the mass shooting, yes, there's criminals. There's violent gun crime in the U.S. Most of it's, committed. I think the vast majority of violent crime with a firearm is committed by somebody that's already been in the system at one point or another. But the mass shooting kind of thing, most of those kids look normal, right? Until you really deep dive back into the psychological, and that's where you get it. And that's that mental health that, these kids you're looking at, well, he looked normal. And then all of a sudden the FBI comes in, they say, oh, but we found this and we found this and we found this. And
all these red flags.
Yeah. And the kid's parents, they're not involved with his life at all. They just, and how much of this shit can be blamed on the parents? I think it's, as a parent myself, Paul, you're there. You will be shortly. It's our responsibility to make sure, we're involved in our kids' life enough so we know what the hell's going on, whether they like it or not. My kid, I hear these kids, oh, this is my phone. I can do what I want. You're not, you shouldn't be able to read my text. You know what? When you start paying for that when you're 18 and you're not in my house, then you can tell me that.
That's
Until
it.
You don't own shit.
Yeah.
You're going to vet everything through me. And unfortunately, parents just don't do that. I mean, growing up, it was nothing to walk through a Walmart and see a mother beating the shit out of her kid because he got an ass whipping right there because he did something he wasn't supposed to do. That doesn't happen anymore. You spank your kid in public, you're going to the pokey 15 minutes later. Somebody has already called child services on you or something.
That's it. I mean, this gentle parenting, look at how where society is now. Like, this is not working out clearly.
No, that was whoever came up with that idea. And you know what? I don't know if it was so much an idea. Is it just gradually over time kind of morphed into that?
A weaker, softer society. Just, yeah.
Easier to control a weaker, softer society.
Exactly.
Oh, here's Paul's conspiracy theory coming. I know where this is going.
This is stating a simple fact.
All right. All right, so we've talked about hunting, and one of the things too I was going to get to on my notes, but we've already talked about it. is there's so much hypocrisy. So we talked about the hunting and the fact that the far leaning left controls what goes on from a conservation perspective, but it's and that work overshadows the good work in conservation that's done by hunters and biologists and everybody else. And unfortunately, we can highlight that, but until these members of your government are willing to look at the constituents and say, okay, I need to look at this and look at it from a scientific perspective, nothing's going to change.
No, that's it. And I mean, I don't really know if policymakers are ever going to look at things through a scientific perspective or a fact-based perspective. I think it's all just going to be to appease to like the majority of the voters.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, that should never be the case.
I know. That's just my feeling.
I mean, well, and that's the thing, if we talk about, swing states and other stuff like that, based on our election, and, you've got this giant, we'll use Ohio for an example, right? Ohio's got a population, I'm going to make up a number, 20 million people in the state of Ohio, right? And 60% of that population lives in either Cleveland, Cincinnati, or Columbus, which makes up less than 2% of the landmass of that state. But those people that live in that city dictate what happens. No, that for me, that is not what our founding fathers, I don't think they didn't think it was going to come to that when they put forth our Declaration of Independence and they put together our Constitution. They never thought about those mass population centers.
Well, I think in Canada it's the same thing. Like I think just going on like the city of Vancouver basically controls the entire thing, and it's just like that makes no sense. Like
Montreal,
if
Toronto.
If you live in the city, you don't know what it's like to run into 9 black bear in a rural road. Like,
and I guess that begs the question: is that equal representation? Because I feel like it's not.
No.
And they're, just like, and we have the same problem here. And fortunately, people started waking up and Trump got a lot of people to cross party lines, but something needs to be done about that. Just because there's a mass population center and those people live in their own bubble doesn't mean they should be able to control what goes on in the rest of the damn country. It's ridiculous to think that. I guarantee your farmers and, the people that are out there working there, they're also hunters. They're probably pro-gun. I mean, you show me a farmer in the States that's not a hunter or pro-gun and I'll kiss your ass.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, livestock control, like livestock protection, everything like that, like farmers need and want guns. They have a legitimate use for them.
So, this is kind of we don't really talk about gun rights a whole bunch on here. I like it.
Oh.
Chris cut me off with our Australian buddy. He cut us off during the podcast. He really didn't want to go down that. All right, I'm going to bring something else up. I bring it up on every single podcast. Paul, you may or may not know where I'm going here.
Here we go.
Oh, no.
So with the rise of hunting influencers on social media and those personalities, do you think this trend is enhancing or harming the broader image of hunting? And I'll go one step further, not only hunting, but for firearms possession and use for shooting sports, for example.
I think in the grand scheme of things, it is definitely enhancing our initiatives. It's encouraging more people to join the community, try hunting for themselves, try sports shooting for themselves. And most of the people that are influencing hunting and sports, like the vast majority that are influencing this on social media, are doing it right, educating people properly, doing it safely, all of that fun stuff. So it's just a great way to actually educate the public, make it more normal, more mainstream. I don't know if this is how it was in the States, but in Canada, it was so huge for people that owned guns and hunted to just hide the fact that they did that. They kind of thought, if we hide the fact that we own guns and hunt, then they'll leave us alone. Nobody will bother us. Clearly, that's not the case. So we've just lost so many years of educating future generations and educating the general public that social media is a great tool for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think that was ever the case here in the States. I've never, at least not in my life, I've never been
I
in a
wouldn't imagine.
where it was easier for me to just say I wasn't a hunter rather than just face it. But then again, I've never lived in a Chicago. I've never lived in a New York City proper or a LA or a San Francisco. I've never lived in a really left leaning, city.
I mean, I have friends that live like, and I tell them I hunt and they live in New York City, and it's like, really? Why? Like, you don't get it. I don't know. You have 5 hours to talk about this. The reason why I like to go
Yeah.
hunting and fishing.
You hunt. I just realized this whole time Jen can't see me on her screen.
I can't.
Yeah, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh gosh, shit.
Do you know what's so funny? It's usually like while we're eating like a steak, and
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. People
Yep.
that still eat meat, it's like I just don't contract kill my food. I mean, I go and harvest it myself.
Listen, I don't think I've bought actually store-bought meat aside from something specialty. If I need, a special type of Italian sausage or something, for whatever, I haven't bought store-bought meat, save chicken, because I don't grow chickens at my house, in 10 years.
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things. And I mean, we talk about it all the time. Paul and I, our thing is, well, how many deer do you need this year to stock your freezer back up to make it through next year, kind of thing. And that's what we're always talking about until we get there. And we don't necessarily hunt party tags per se, but we hunt for one another too. Like, okay, listen, my freezer's done for this year. Come get you a doe or whatever. Do we need to shoot you a couple doe? And it's a big group that we all kind of work together to make
Take
sure
what you
we've all
need.
got enough. Yeah, venison. And it's healthy. It's good for you. It's a lot better than this protein-fed bullshit that you
Oh
get
my
at a grocery
God.
store now.
I know. Everyone wants
Um,
to be so health conscious, but then they want to, negate how health conscious hunting can be.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing healthier. I mean, it's actually, sometimes it makes it difficult to cook because it's so fat-free and lean.
There's no
Yes.
fat. Yeah, there's
Yep.
no fat.
Yeah,
You
I
have
mean,
to
it
add
does.
fat
I
to
mean,
certain things. Like,
may not be problematic for you, Oscar, but for somebody like me, that I specialize in Chef Boyardee, so for me, it's a little bit more difficult.
Just deep fry.
Okay, I want to go back because I missed an opportunity there, Paul. I did not pass this up. I'm going to go back to the influencer thing for a second because I want to tell you my thoughts on this because it does piss me off. So in the States, and I'm glad you said what you did because I believe there are some good people out here. I think the problem that we've had, especially with the rise of platforms like TikTok, is it's turned people. We've got these social media influencers now in the hunting industry, and it's male and female. It could go either way, but a lot of them have a tendency to be female now. Where you'll see this influencer that's got several million followers, and she's getting rep by this bow company and this pant company and this shoe company. And if you look at her reels, right, it's all she's out back in a bikini shooting a bow.
yes.
And she's getting sponsors and getting paid out the wazoo. Listen, you're not in it because you enjoy the sport. You're in it to make a dollar. That's literally what it's not about. Conservation. It's not about ethics. It's not about growing the hunting
Educating.
community.
Yeah.
It's there. You're there for a paycheck at the end of the day. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. That is exactly what it's for. I mean, yes, and I think to some of those people, and there are men that do the same thing too. Absolutely do. They for whatever reason, they found their niche in that. Oh, hey, there's this giant group of people out there that if I pick up a bow or I go shoot a pistol and a halter top on, that hey,
It's going to get
every
millions
man
of
in-
views.
Yeah, instantly. And now I'm monetized. So hell, I might as well keep going with this. This is great. This is easy. And like I said, at the end of the day, they're scripting these things and doing things. If you look at it's all exactly the same. Show me a reel where you're in a tree stand. Show me a reel where you're in a turkey blind, where
You're gutting a
actually
deer.
harvesting an animal. I can't. It pisses me off because we work so hard on our content. And not just the podcast side, the hunting side, like it's incredibly tough to film hunts. And we've got an entire new season we're getting ready to drop. It's hard, like it's hard work and it's expensive to do. And we do it for the right reasons. We want to get other people involved in the industry. Like I said, we don't have sponsors and we're not taking sponsors. We are monetized on YouTube, but that doesn't pay to keep the lights turned on in the course of the month, much less, have any left over. So we do it because we love the sport and we love doing it. And we're passionate about conservation. We're passionate about our gun rights and firearms, and to see that shit just get taken advantage of by this people, it just pisses me off. I say it every podcast. Okay, ran over. There you go,
No,
Paul.
it is hard to see. I mean, it makes everyone else look, less serious. It kind of takes away from the seriousness of it. And especially whenever women do it, it makes all of the other female hunters kind of look like they're just out there for, like the attention or the sponsorships. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
and
is shitty to
I
see.
normally caveat my rant with I don't want to paint the entirety of the females in the industry with that broad stroke, because that's not true. There are women out there that work off, that work hard, that do it the right way. They've been doing it for years and they deserve everything they've got. It's those overnight sensations that, I mean, some of these channels, they're literally the same, the huntress this or huntress that. There's a video of her riding a lawn tractor with a bikini on.
I
What the
know.
hell does that have to do with hunting or conservation?
I
And
know.
don't get me wrong, as a man's going to stop and click on it, right? If she's attractive and she's, yes, okay, you got my attention. Does that make me an for looking at it? Maybe, because I'm preaching the opposite, but she's found a segment of the population that's going to stop and look at that shit. The problem I have is when it starts getting into sponsorships and shit like that that actually do affect hunting. Like, who's going to take her seriously? Okay, she's got a Matthews bow and she's out there in a bikini, and you can tell she has no idea how to even draw a bow correctly. It's it fucked up as a football bat when you look at it. And then, she slings one down there and the bow about falls out of her hand. I'm like, oh yeah, Matthews, that's a great job right there. Who the just bought a bow because they saw that
Good
chick
luck.
squeeze the trigger one time?
That's it. Exactly. Yeah, it's not really doing their sales a whole lot of justice.
No. Okay, there you go, Paul. That's my one rant for the
Survived another rant.
for the show. So, and the other thing too, and while we're on that though, you are a strong advocate though for increasing participation of women and younger generations in hunting and firearm sports. So, talk to us about that. What progress have you seen? Is it taking a back step? Are you making progress? And what are some of the challenges ahead of you still?
I think in general, we're seeing a lot more women enter the hunting and firearms community. A lot more women want to get their firearms license. A lot more women want to be more self-sufficient, get their hunting license. I think just me showing, myself going out hunting alone, it sort of shows like you don't need somebody to go with you. You don't need, a hand to hold. You just do your own research, get out there. That's the main thing. It's really not as hard as it looks in the grand scheme of things. And just encouraging more, showing that it's not necessarily a man's sport. Yeah, it's a male dominated industry. But it doesn't mean that women can't get involved. I do hear a lot of women say like, well, my husband doesn't hunt, or I have no one to take me like out hunting. Well, my parents didn't hunt. My husband didn't hunt before we got together. Like you figure out what you want to do and you go out and do it. And more women need to be open to that. Just self-sufficiency, getting out there and doing it. A huge thing that we've seen in Canada are more and more ladies range days and ladies specific hunting groups. So groups that will take, groups of women out hunting to educate them on waterfowl hunting and to get them out in this activity, because I guess, some women might feel intimidated going out with other men. And the range days have been huge. I'm hosting one in May at my local range, and it's just to get more women involved, because that's another demographic that we can grow. Like, we want more people involved in this. And if we're not touching on women and youth getting involved, then we're missing a huge population of people that could be building up this community.
Yeah, exactly. On there, I know like when you hear like any kind of like the big hunting companies and stock, they always talk about, they always emphasize like it is the largest demographic that they need to try to like incentivize, and like, hey, this is the largest opportunity, which is the female sector on
Yeah.
there. Like what other than like range days and stuff like that, like how does that like, like it's one thing going to like, oh, I'm gonna go shoot, sporting clays, on a Saturday, but how does that how does that translate, in your opinion, of course, to like, hey, act, and then like, we're gonna take that into to going on your first hunt or going on your first fishing trip and things like that.
I think it definitely builds up some of the interest. A lot of times whenever I do host or volunteer with these ladies range days, we'll have women come in that have never touched a gun in their lives, and they go and they shoot, and then they ask, well, how can I get my hunting license? How do I get my gun license? How do I get involved? So, I mean, not everybody's going to want to get involved, but at least it sort of gives a foot in the door for some of the people that do want to get involved, and the people that don't necessarily want to pursue hunting and sports shooting. At least they can see that it's not, some scary, uncontrolled uh, activity that people do. They're more educated on it, and the general public and mainstream media seeing women involved kind of makes it harder to battle, because a lot of the rhetoric in Canada is, well, we're banning guns to protect women. And it's so easy nowadays for people to attack the, straight
Did you
white
just say
man.
we're banning firearms to protect women?
That is a huge part of Bill C21. Is it's a women's rights initiative.
Was that a big issue prior to extended, violent crimes committed against women with guns, as especially from a demographic? If you look at male to female gun violence, was there a huge...
I think the majority is male on male. I mean, a lot of it's gang related violence too. So let's get some youth programs out there so that our generations aren't, going into this gang activity. They're going on to other branches of life. But yeah, that was one of their argumentative points, was protecting women. They just
Yeah, well,
throw
so
out
do you
any
think?
buzzwords
Yeah.
that they want to get the emotional voter.
All right. So I mean, we've already been at this for a while, and I appreciate you staying on with us. So let's take a second, if you will. And we're obviously not, Jen, we're going to have you back on for sure, because we're definitely not going to get through all this today.
No
But I
problem.
would really like to give you a chance, based on the industry you're in, what you do, and you're passionate about it, take a few minutes and just, whatever you want to get across to us stupid Americans. Here's your platform right now to say it.
I'm so sorry. I think the mic broke up there, so I only heard a little bit of what you had asked.
You just heard stupid Americans.
Yes.
No, all
No.
right, I'll go back. And no, so you're so passionate about everything you do, and you've got all these parts and pieces, and you've got the podcast, and you've got the website, and everything you're so involved in. So given the platform now, this, our viewership is like 98% American. If there's something you want to say, now's a great time. The platform is yours. Just let her rip.
I think that Americans need to know that Canadians do love guns. If they don't, then they just don't know it yet. I think there's maybe some misconceptions in the States that Canadians, are anti-gun and we don't want these firearm rights. That's not true. There's just mainstream media making it seem that way. There are over 2 million, which doesn't sound large, licensed gun owners in Canada. And yeah, we all love firearms. We respect them as much as you guys do. Oh, I think I lost you guys again. I'm waiting for that internet to come back. Did I get you guys
Elon
back
must have
here?
forgot. Yeah, you're back now. Elon must have forgot to put a heater in your Starlink.
I know. It's a crazy blizzard outside. I think the dish just keeps getting piled up with snow. I don't know where exactly I cut out there. I just saw my...
Canadians do love guns.
Yes, Canadians
Yes,
do love guns.
that's it. Oh my goodness. So Canadians do love guns. I think that's something that Americans need to know. The ones that don't love guns just don't know it yet. It's just education. I do think that a lot of people in the States, just from what I read in the comment sections, think that Canadians don't appreciate guns or want the firearm rights. A lot of Canadians really, really do want those rights, and envy the rights that you guys have in America. Wouldn't have property rights whatsoever. So yeah, just because our mainstream media makes us seem like we're just a little bit more politically weak or quiet, that's not really the case. We're really ticked off about what's going on in our country, and we just don't really get the voice to say it.
Wow, that was perfect.
Yeah.
No, that was good. And Paul, so I know you've been going back and forth. Do you have anything to kind of close to Jen? I know that there's several parts of this that we never got to. So is there something that you kind of tuned in on that you want to ask her?
No, I mean, how do we end it on a good note, right? If let's say things do get better, and what's your ideal hunt up there? if I want to go, let's say we actually open it back up to Americans and this world, what's your favorite hunt in Canada?
I haven't gone bear hunting yet, which is crazy. So that's one thing I really, really want to do. But overall, my favorite hunt is turkey hunting. I think it's so interactive and so exciting. There are a lot of people in Canada that don't have the opportunity to hunt turkey. I don't really know how limited it is in the States, but anybody in Canada that can't hunt turkey really wishes they could. Yeah, turkey hunting is definitely my favorite. It's super fun.
That's we've got friends that are that way. We all turkey hunt. So everybody here, we all turkey hunt, and
Okay.
we've got several species of turkey. Here in South Florida, where Oscar and I are, for example, we've got Osceolas. Where Paul lives in St. Augustine, they don't have Osceolas; they have Easterns. Kentucky, there's Easterns. So you guys, are yours Eastern birds up there too, or you
They
have
are.
Easterns? Yeah, so I know for us, chasing Miriams or Goulds or the Rios. I mean, that's kind of up
Oh,
on
that's
our
cool.
list. But we've got a buddy, this is Mike Sumner.
Oh yeah.
That guy, as much as he loves whitetail hunting, he'd
Sure.
put the rifle. He would sooner go turkey hunting every single day than hunt a whitetail, and it's crazy. He loves whitetail hunting, but this guy, he is on another level when it comes to turkey hunting.
For years, my favorite hunt was whitetail. I would get so amped up for like whitetail season, loved whitetail hunting, and I do still love it, obviously. But I don't know. The more I learn about turkey hunting and the more I go turkey hunting, it's really quickly creeping up on the top of my list.
Well, and it's an art too. I mean, and that's
Oh my
we should
gosh.
try to look at a future guest that's from the turkey world, because we've not done that yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a I watch somebody that's good at it, like Mike, for example. And the calling turkey is not just going out there with a box call or scratch a few things out. There's a rhyme and reason to it, and it's an interaction between you and that bird, and that adrenaline's pumping and running, and
And if you do the wrong thing, like you're done. Like that turkey's gonna leave and be like, "No, you're not real."
Yeah. If you're too quiet, or you're too fast paced. I mean, there's just, oh no, you can't do that. Oh no, this, you should have clucked when you purred, or you should have purred when you clucked. I'm like, how do you know
Yeah.
this? He's like, I've been turkey hunting for 45 years. That's how I know this. I'm like, me? No, I don't know that. I'm like, can I get those Fox Pro calls that they use for predators? Can we just hook that up with a turkey call, and will that work for me? I, I I don't think Florida Fishing Game is going to like that comment.
I doubt
very
it.
much. All honesty, I've never done that though. So,
Nah.
all right. Is there? Let's see. Hey, let's talk at the. So, I mean, we're already talking about politics. Let me throw this one out there real quick. Yeah. I want to know. So, I don't know. I do know a few Canadians. I have some hunting outfitters that I still talk to on occasion. What is your take on Trump and everything that's going on right now with him? I mean, what from a Canadian perspective, how do you see this orange guy with the weird hair, and all this new stuff going down? Does it look like a shit show over there to you guys?
Honestly, not really. Canada's been such a shit show for the about last 9 years that nothing that's happening over there really phases me. There are a lot of people here. Obviously, we saw, in the hockey game yesterday, the booing at the state's anthem, which I think is absolutely
National anthem, yeah.
ridiculous. Yes, exactly. Like completely insane. I hate that politics and mainstream media is forcing people to act like that. It's insane to me. A lot of people are upset about the threat of tariffs, but I'm having a really hard time understanding that, because why are you not upset at our own government for fixing things that should have been fixed years ago? And I mean, our government has been taxing us to death. So all of a sudden people are in an uproar over the 25% tariffs that are being threatened upon us, when we've had carbon taxes for the past however many years. Our income taxes are out of control. We have a new carbon tax boost coming in April. Like, yeah, I don't know. Things in the States don't really seem that bad, especially now that you guys have a change of government, especially compared to what's happening in Canada. And I think people that are upset at what's going on in the States and upset at the orange guy, that I notice he's not as orange as he used to be by any means.
He's got a new makeup artist.
He's getting great. He's got a good spray tan guy now. I think they just really need to educate themselves. Stop listening to mainstream media. Do your own research, because mainstream media is really demonizing Trump down here. But these people need to take a look at what their own government's doing and not doing.
Your guys' real estate is insane. Canadian real estate is crazy.
It's
stupid expensive.
There's like
disgusting.
one houses in like Vancouver for like $1.5 million.
Yeah, a friend of mine that I used to work with, he moved from Canada to Texas, and he bought a gorgeous ranch for the amount of money that you could buy a townhouse here in Canada.
Yeah.
It's so weird to see, because I live in a very rural area, and we have some pretty like run down houses going for, $400,000-$500,000, and I'm like, what in the Lord's name? Like, no land, needs a lot of work. What's going on here?
I want to go back to the media thing real quick, because you did bring up a good point about mainstream media, and I'll just go back to my personal experience. So the last 4 years under the Biden administration here, I stopped watching mainstream media entirely, not Fox News, everything. I just stopped. I started getting my news from BBC, because it seemed like that's the only place that I could get kind of a fair shake. Like they were kind of reporting on what was actually going on versus, our CNNs, our MSNBC, CNBCs, they're so left that you get this one-sided view. But at the same time, to me, Fox is the same way. They're so far right that for me, I never knew whether I was coming or going. I tend to believe what's going on in Fox more than I do the other news outlets, obviously. But still, like, can't anybody just tell the truth anymore? Just
I
report.
know.
Your job as a reporter. Report the news. You don't have to take a political stand one way or the other. It's almost like, when doctors take the Hippocratic Oath, right? As a journalist, do you have no integrity or their moral sanctity or moral compass that actually works? Like, you're going to throw one side of it out? Whatever happened, to the old days, when you just reported, this is what happened, make up your own mind.
Report the facts, like make it unbiased. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, the news isn't the news anymore. It's just a political voice for whichever party's feeding them the most money. It's pretty damaging.
And that's certainly unfortunate. And now that Trump's reelected, I don't watch very much news. So I do like the Elon stuff though, because he pisses everybody off for whatever reason, and I really like what he's doing.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, I've heard people like here being like, cancel your Starlink, get rid of Starlink. I'm like, man, I have Starlink. I love it. Like, it's the only way I can get internet out in the middle of nowhere.
That same way for me in Kentucky. That's it. You know what? It works great unless there's a snowstorm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Unless there's a snowstorm, it works fantastic.
It's always top notch. Yeah. Except for today.
And now you guys, Trudeau, we're talking politics. He stepped down after nearly 10 years, right? He was 2015. Is that when he took office?
He did first take office in 2015, and he unfortunately did not officially step down. He said he will step down once a new leader is selected. There are a few people running in the Liberal leadership race. One of the guys is Mark Carney, who I think will be just as destructive as Trudeau, if not more. And it's really sad to see, because this guy who's never been elected, like he's not an elected official, but the media and everything is really pushing this one guy while there are still other people running for the leadership race. So it's kind of weird that they're highlighting this one guy, already making him seem like he is the leader.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Very, very similar to what happened to you guys.
Sleepy Joe all over again.
Your guys' finance minister just stepped down, right?
She did, and she is one of the people running for Liberal leadership.
Oh.
She stepped down as, finance minister, and oh my gosh, she was like, I forgot how they worded it, VP or something. But now she's running as Liberal leader. We don't hear anything about her because we only hear about this one guy, Mark Carney. That's going to be a complete nightmare if elected.
And when you say liberal, when I hear the words liberal,
yes,
I think super leftist. Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit? So
in Canada, the parties are different. I know in the States, you guys have Democrats and Republicans. Those are the two main groups, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
we've got conservatives. So kind of like the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
The Liberals, which are more like the Democrats. And then we have the NDP, which is the New Democratic Party, which is like super far left, like socialist, shared revenue, all of this kind of craziness. So yeah, that's basically how it works. We've got a few other parties like Bloc Québécois that only services Quebec, which is insane that they're a political party to begin with. And then like the Green Party, which has one or two people. It's
we have independents here.
yes, we do
So
have a couple of independents, I should say.
yes, but so your largest party then I would assume is the Liberal Party.
Yeah. Historically, it's always been either a liberal or conservative government. So liberal and conservative are our two largest parties.
And is there any chance that you'll have a conservative elected to be prime minister?
I think there's a huge chance. Before Trudeau stepped down, or said that he was going to step down, conservatives would have won by a landslide. They would have had a mass majority government. Now that Trudeau has announced that he will step down, unfortunately, we're seeing a slight decrease in conservative support and a slight increase in liberal support in our polls, which really sucks because, swing voters swing so easily. And a lot of the people that weren't going to be voting liberal were solely not voting liberal because of Trudeau. And now that there's a change, even though it's, kind of same shit, different pile, they're going to vote liberal again.
And that's very similar to what we saw here. So when Biden announced, well, I think he was forced out when he announced that he wasn't going to run again. We all knew that the coming election was going to be a landslide. Trump was going to kick his ass one side of the road up and down the other. But then when he announced that he wasn't going to run and they put Kamala there, then all of a sudden, like, oh, the race got tighter all of a sudden. Now it didn't end up that way, but that was the fear here too, that so they kind of saw the writing on the wall there, and it's the same situation for the most part. But it fortunately for us, it worked out in our favor. But it could have gone the other way in a hurry.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, he's awesome.
He's awesome. Great.
Yeah, he is. I mean, I hope he's going to be awesome once elected, if he gets elected. Which I mean, I do. I feel like conservatives are still going to get it. I really hope people aren't dumb enough to vote for liberals all over again and have another however many years of taxes and crime. Hope once he comes in, he reverses the prohibitions and everything. But yeah, it's really scary to see how just like a slight change like that can manipulate the votes, and it just shows that people really aren't informed.
Well, no, not if you've got, especially if you get your news from mainstream media, then that's what you've got to base your educated decision on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. If you control the media, you control everything else. And I think that's one thing that we've learned is that, hey, wait a minute, we need to back this stuff up. And now they're finding out that, with Doge and the USAID stuff that's going on, they were funding news outlets and all kind of other stuff that were super left wing. And this was not going to be a political podcast, by the way.
I thought we were a hunting podcast.
Yeah, we are. This is the first time we've ever done anything
like this. Oh, no. I'm sorry.
No, it's good, though. I mean, it just adds to the repertoire, I guess. We can get a little bit of everybody's opinion on there. Do something different every week.
As much as I hate it, yeah, you have to be. I feel like you've got to be super politically aware if you want to keep hunting and firearms alive.
It's one of the weirder things that, like, being hunters and fishermen, we have to like advocate for our rights.
Yeah. Well, and in Florida, and I know we said we're going to wrap this up, and I promise I will. But in Florida, we just had a bill. Remember that was on our ballot that guaranteed our rights as hunters to be able to hunt.
It passed.
Yeah, so that's how bad things were starting. We actually had a bill in the state of Florida to guarantee our rights to be able to hunt and fish.
Well, it's constitutional now.
Yes, constitutional now.
It's been added to the state constitution, our rights to hunt and fish.
We need that in Canada. Right now, it's just Indigenous hunters that have a right to hunt and fish, and the rest of Canadians, even though it's still part of our heritage, screw us.
Yeah. It's a different world.
It's
right there.
It's wild.
One flight away.
It's a flight. Yeah, it's a short flight too. It's not even a long flight. But Paul, did you have anything for Jen before we wrap up?
No, I already asked my question earlier when you said we were wrapping up 30 minutes ago.
I'm sorry, Paul. You need a card or something, or a button that flashes up here when you got something to say. See, that's all I said. I need a Jamie so you can text under the table so you can see that shit. Well, good. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap up then. So Jen, thanks so much for joining us today and for shedding light on these critical issues during such a transformative period in your time. For our listeners, be sure to check out the whywehunt.ca, and the Horrible People podcast, and make sure we'll put the links below to follow you on Facebook, Instagram, so they can get more insights into what you do on a daily basis. You can also stay updated on the Horrible People podcast by following its Facebook page. I will also link that below. And as always, thanks for tuning in to the Salt Lake Worldwide podcast. Wow, say that 3 times fast. And stay informed, stay passionate. We'll see you next time. And as always, live free, hunt hard, keep chasing the adventure.